Okay, now I'm going to go to gallery. Yay!
Yeah. Good job.
That may have been overly enthusiastic.
I was right there with you, but I was muted still. Hey.
All right. My name is Venessa Nisley, and this is my friend Bethany Reel, who is an author. She is mostly, I would say, well, all right now, contemporary, right?
Yes.
For the most
Yeah.
part. Okay.
I'm afraid of historical or anything else, or fantasy. So yeah, contemporary.
And I'm afraid of, you're the only contemporary one that I've truly liked to date. So.
Oh, that's nice. That's really sad.
Well, I'm getting on all these other books that I'm reviewing, and I think in at least 2 videos I say, because I like my friend Bethany Reel, I'm giving this book a chance.
Oh, I need to watch those. You have I was off Facebook for a while, and so I need to go catch up on everything.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I wanted to let people know how we met too, because we kind of have an interesting start. We sort of did a flyby for a semester at Multnomah Bible College.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only reason we met is because I was dating your ex-boyfriend.
Who was my friend at the time.
Who was your friend at the time. And for some reason, that was not awkward to me.
Me neither.
And so even when we broke up, you were right there, like by the phone saying, do not get back together.
I remember you coming to my dorm room after you broke up crying. I think you came straight to my dorm room. And I remember, I think it's in a journal somewhere, that was the weirdest reality of, because I was literally knew exactly how you felt because I'd been through a breakup with the same person before.
That did not even
bonded us.
I would love to read that journal entry someday.
It's buried in some really ugly years. Yeah.
So, okay, well, I want to get started, and I want this to be a video not necessarily on any particular book that you've done, although I do want to do another video about that. But what I do want to talk about is for authors who are just beginning, that very first start. I don't know what to do. And so this is going to be, I'm going to skip the cliche question that I will ask you in a minute. But the first question I'm going to ask you is, what came first? The desire to write something, anything, or there was a story that begged you to learn how to write? Figure it out, I need to be told. What came first for you?
I think that's hard to answer because I always loved writing and I wrote a lot. But I didn't believe in my ability to write a story. So I thought I was an essay writer. I don't even know what that meant because I don't write essays very well. But I didn't think I could write dialogue. I knew I couldn't write poetry. I love your mug. It's so pretty. Sorry, I love mugs. It's so pretty. But I remember my dad telling me once, I would always try to write stories because I was always writing. And I would send them to my dad. I still do. And he said, my first book, when I sent him a little bit of it, he said, man, I really hope I get to finish this one. Because I would start stories and not finish them. And so...
and that was your first one?
The Earth is Full is my first one that I finished.
And that's the first one he commented on?
That's the first one that he said, I hope I get to finish it. Because actually, even if I wrote before The Earth is Full.
I didn't know that.
And I only got halfway through, and that was one of those books that my dad read half of, and I stopped writing it. So I never knew how to get to, once I got to a middle of a story, I didn't know how to get out of a story. And The Earth is Full was a story that came to me in an instant. It was scenes from it came to me very quickly, standing in the back of my church, listening to 2 women give a talk about a mission trip they had just taken to Thailand. Mm-hmm. And they had visited, I think it's called Walking Street. Now I'm totally blank on what it's called, but they were talking about children being sex trafficked. And I was a mom of little kids and was horrified. And it's this whole story just hit me, and I went home and wrote it. And I wrote it in probably 6 months, I think. And everything rolled from there. And then once I broke through that barrier of not being able to finish a story, I kept writing stories. So
Okay, so you always like to write, but the one you finished was one that was like, write me.
Yes, right.
No, that's interesting. That's cool. So, okay, so let's say now somebody has their story, or they say they had an idea, or one came to them, either or. Are you what they call a plotter or a pantser? Do you know the difference?
I don't know what other word you just said. A plotter or a what?
Pantser. So
What is that?
I'm gonna read you. But the definition is at one site. Who knows? I need glasses.
Oh, they're so pretty.
A plotter starts writing with the major pieces and parts of the story already known. He plans out the action, plot, character elements, and all the rest ahead of time. When he starts the actual writing, he's turning that strong outline into elegant prose, but the framework is already solidly in place. A pantser writer starts at the beginning and lets the characters and situation determine what happens next. She might have some general idea of where the story is going to end, but how she'll get from A to B is up to what she discovers as she writes. And I just noticed that in this definition, they made the pantser a woman and the plotter a man.
Yeah, I got that. And I feel like it'd be opposite, but maybe I'm just, between my husband and I, in normal realms, I'm the planner, but in writing realms, I'm not. I think I'd be a planner only so far as thinking it through for a long time, just thinking through different scenarios and what does so-and-so in the book care about, those kind of things. So I'm always working it in my head first. But I learned after my first book, if I sat down and wrote an outline and tried to stick to it, my characters ripped it right out of my hands and they make it what they want to make it. So because that first idea I got of a book, none of it happened. None of it. I think maybe one little scene.
Those first images that were in your head, you didn't end up doing?
Right. It was very, very different what they were going to do. Okay. So it kind of, but the premise was the same. The purpose was the same. Trying to tell people about. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say your inclination is to be sort of a plotter, but it doesn't work out.
Right. And when you say pantser, I don't even know how to spell that word you're saying, but I'm picturing like a junior high kid depantsing somebody.
That's how it's spelled.
So like immature, is that what that's supposed to mean? If you just fly by the seat of your pants, maybe that's what that means?
Oh, yeah, okay. Fly by the seat of your pants.
Okay. I'm not sharp, but I get there eventually. So I think I'd be more of a pantser, but like I have my little notebooks for each book that I carry around and write notes in. But like this one that I'm working on right now, nothing in this has happened the way I wrote it. So
that is such a good idea. You have a notebook for each book. I have 10 notebooks and they all have parts of everything in it, and I can, whenever I'm trying to find something, I'm like, in this one? Nope. Right. This one? Nope.
Mine actually is also in a notebook on my phone. So my husband can't drive because his MS symptoms make it so he can't drive. He sees double. So we don't want him on the road. But he will be sitting next to me. We'll be driving somewhere. I'm like, oh, open my notebook. And then I just start spouting stuff to him. And he doesn't care that it doesn't make sense. He'll write my notes for me in my phone and then save it for me. He's really sweet. And then sometimes I'm like, don't you want to know what that meant? He's like, not really. I don't know. I'll read it eventually, I'm sure.
Is he? I should ask. Is he supportive of your writing?
Very, very, very supportive. He actually wasn't a believer when we got married, but neither of us knew that. But one of his, he's a believer now. One of the parts of his story is that he started to soften toward the Lord when he watched me finish that first book, he says, because he could tell the Lord was leading it, because he'd seen me start and stop so many stories. But this one I just went for. I was like nursing my youngest while I'm writing on the, like you're propping up your baby and typing on your lap and stuff. Like I was writing all of the time. So he, that's a fun part of our story and his story with the Lord. So
that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
That fictional writing can affect people in so many different ways. It's so much more than a story. Like, and that the Lord calls us to write certain things. And if he calls us to write them, then he will be glorified in one way or another, whether it's in your writing or just the act of writing itself that proved to your husband that you were serious about it.
Right.
That's awesome. Now I write historical, you write contemporary, at least at this
Mm-hmm.
point in time, that's where we're at. But in either one, there's a certain amount of research that needs to be done, because in one of yours, it took place in the city where you live, but in the books about Thailand, obviously you don't live in Thailand.
Right.
So whether you're researching historical time period or just an area that you don't live, what sorts of resources did you have to, okay, so it's a twofold question. What sorts of resources did you use to write your material? And did you look up all of that material prior to writing, or did you look it up as you went along? Like, oh, I don't know what a brothel looks like, so I have to go figure that out? Or did you
Thank goodness I don't know what a brothel looks like. Well, for those books, my first two in Thailand and Cambodia, I look it up while I'm writing, sort of. It's kind of interesting. It seems like if I wanted to go back and try to find what I used for research, I don't think I find it. Sometimes it's just listening to, I have breakfast with my dad on Saturday mornings when we're not in quarantine, and I drive early, and for some reason I listen to NPR while I'm driving. I'm really conservative, but I'm so fascinated by NPR stories. And
is that where it's on really early in the morning and it tells you what's happening in different countries?
Yeah, it's like National Public Radio. So
Aaron wakes me up to that every morning at like 6.
Sorry. Listen, sometimes you'll get interesting ideas. So I heard a story, like for my second book, The Heavens Are Telling, I had heard a story of, I can't remember. It was a group of monks that purposefully handicap children so that they'll get more money for the temple. And that kind of brought about the ideas behind The Heavens Are Telling. I didn't do that entirely, but it brought those ideas about. And I started to learn in my research of Cambodia about places that flood for half the year. So the houses are on stilts and they ride around on boats half the year, and then the other half it's totally drained out and dry. And that was the village that story took place in. I don't remember where I found that. I have no idea. It's almost, I don't want to say the Lord is leading me, but it's my creativity and different ideas just come at different times. And while I'm writing, I'll think, I wonder what they would be eating for breakfast at this village. And then that turns into a whole bunch of rabbit trails of research that turn into setting and the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So I watch documentaries a lot on like Amazon and stuff, and I got a lot of stories for the second book from documentaries also. So festivals where people get tattooed different spirits and then the spirit overtakes them. There's a scene like that in that book. It was really creepy, and I watched a documentary on it. So
and the horrible thing about being a writer then is whenever you see something creepy or weird, you're like, I'm gonna write that.
I know.
No one minds.
Right.
So that's true. Do you use anything for your writing in general, like a thesaurus or a synonym finder?
I do.
Or
I tried to have my stack of stuff. So I don't know if it's backwards, like the emotion thesaurus. Have you seen
No,
this
I can
book?
see it. Yep.
Have you ever seen this book?
No.
It is so good, Vanessa. So like,
hold it up again so people can see.
So here's how it opens. Like this word is insecurity. Okay. So it'll give the definition for insecurity, the physical signals of insecurity, like smoothing down clothing, a self-deprecating laugh, blah, blah, blah. God. And it'll say your mental responses, cues of acute or long-term insecurity, cues of suppressed insecurity. And it's like, tells you kind of how to make your character insecure without saying they are.
Oh my gosh.
It is, so it's
my mind is blown right now. I'm like,
I can't believe you haven't heard of this book. Angela Ackerman and Becca, I'm going to say it wrong, Puglisi. It's so good. The Emotion Thesaurus. It is my number one. It's so good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because sometimes you're writing, you're like, how many times have I used the same phrase to show that they feel this way? And I will go to a thesaurus, but I did not know that existed.
It's so much better. I use a thesaurus too, and actually half the time I use the thesaurus, it's not that I'm looking to use one of the words they suggest, it's that I'm really trying to get a feel for what my word means so that I can find a different way to say it. But the Emotion Thesaurus, it's emotions, right? It tells you,
hold up the cover one more time for people to see. Okay, screenshot that, people.
Yeah, a writer's guide to character expression. It is awesome.
All
I
right,
use it all the time. I've had it since my first book.
Text it to me, a picture later.
Yeah, it's really great.
Did you have to plot out your characters? Like some people will have like a different page for each character, like what's their favorite color, what's their, I mean, I feel like no, I know I don't, but I see a lot of newbie, it seems like YouTube videos where they're saying how to plot out your characters, and I'll go in and it's like you should pick their color and their music and what they like, and you plan out this person, and then do you do any of that? Or
no? Not even.
Do you?
I went to a writers conference once. Do you know Robin Lee Hatcher? I think you just reviewed one of her books.
And thank God I reviewed it in a good way.
Okay, good. So Robin Lee Hatcher actually, she lives here. So I've run into her a few times. She spoke at a writers conference I went to, and I remember her saying that when she does her characters, she sits down and she free writes their entire background up until where the book starts. And I remember thinking, that's brilliant. I've tried it and I can't do it, but I do want to know what makes their heart beat. Mm-hmm. So right now I have the girl in my book figured out. I know why she behaves the way she behaves, what happened in her past, how she thinks now, and it's just kind of a knowing of her, but I don't have it written anywhere. Okay. And the hard thing is she's from another book, so I have to stay true to how I represented her in that book as well. And in that book, I wasn't thinking of writing about her anymore. So she was just a small character that didn't matter. And now I have to make sure whatever I said about her lines up with her personality. Which
is particularly difficult if you've written anything in between. To jump back into it.
I can't imagine how you do that. And you have a lot of characters too.
Yeah, I do have a lot of characters.
But like the man in my book, I'm just now figuring out his history. But I know some people will go like find pictures and have whole Pinterest pages of what their characters look like, how they dress. I sometimes do a Pinterest board for inspiration for how does this person maybe dress, where, but really I don't put that much thought into it because they tell me while I'm writing about them. Yeah. They'll tell me who they are.
Yeah. And there's really no wrong or right way, but this is obviously like if you don't do all these things, like maybe you two might suggest a long list that obviously you can still be successful in your character.
For some people, it really does. Some people are that way and they need to be that way and enjoy being that way. If you try to make yourself a writer just based on how someone said, but it's not jiving with you, then try a different way. Because if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying it, it's probably not your way of doing it. You need to try it different.
I saw a woman online that said writing is one of the most amazing vocations because you don't have to go to school for it. I mean, obviously you can, but you don't have to go to school for it. You don't have to do anything like anybody else. You don't have to join a guild. No one has to like okay your characters. Like it's entirely your own imagination, and sort of the sky is the limit in how you want to do things. So it should be helpful to know there's no really wrong way to go about it.
Right.
But there's different ways. Why did you choose the setting of your hometown for? Were both two of your books both in your hometown?
Okay. Yeah, they both are. I just thought it was fun. I liked my hometown. So I like writing about places. Even actually my first two books take place in Thailand and in my hometown. So all my books have highlighted Boise. It's usually Boise I write about, but because I grew up in Boise and now I live right outside Boise. And I just like it. It's just fun. I love being able to go visit those places and write about those places. And I love when people who live here read them and they think it's fun. It's fun to read about your hometown in a book. It's just, so my readers here enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So it's just fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's see. Do you use you kind of clued us in a little bit how you will put notes on your phone and notes in a notebook. Do you write out exact dialogue in your notebooks? Like, there's a woman named Tamara Lee who does medieval fiction, and she always shows online that she writes it all out by hand.
Her whole book?
Yes. Yeah, she'll say, I got done this many words or this many pages today, and she'll take a picture, and then she'll take a little video, and she holds it up, and then she puts notes in her margin.
Wow.
And then she says she's kind of slow going through because she's probably being very thoughtful about her words, because you don't want to mess. Obviously, like with a computer, you can delete and go back and forth.
Right.
And I'm assuming this is just her first draft. I'd love to know more about how her process works. But do you write it out in your notebook, like your actual dialogue, or do you save that for the computer?
If I have a scene that I really want to make it in the book, and like I'll get a snapshot. I don't know if this happens to you, but when I'm writing a book, it's in the back of my mind all the time. It's like a movie playing back there. And every once in a while, they'll have a really good conversation that I need to remember that they had. And so I'll write down like just snippets of a conversation, you know, sometimes like, anyways, I won't tell the conversations I'm thinking of right now, but I write it in a computer. I used to write like longhand like that for essays and things because I would edit when I was putting it into my computer. And I always thought that would be my process, but it is so much faster to write on a computer. So I don't want to waste my time, and I have really bad handwriting that I can't read. So it wouldn't be good to write on my notebook, unfortunately. I'm not patient enough.
Yeah, I know about those little moments where it's in the back of your head, and then you're just like, everything has to stop. I have to write it down right now.
Right.
I don't know if
that was good. I don't know
if you know who Gilbert Morris is. He's like an older, like when I was a teenager, he wrote this series that's like, I don't know, 20-something books long. It starts on the Mayflower and goes like through history of, and they're all relatives of this Winslow family that continues on. And they're really, I remember them being, I remember them being good. I haven't read them in a really long time. But he said he felt like in an interview, he said he felt like he's one of the fastest writers he knew because he speaks into a recorder and then has someone else transcribe it for him. So he talks all his books out. Do you think you could ever do that? I'm not sure if my thoughts would come fast enough.
No. I actually sometimes get, my head goes weird and I'm like, what if I was paralyzed and I couldn't type? Would I be able to speak a book? Like, could I, you know, we're authors. We think of weird things. So if I had to, I think I could, as long as no one else could hear me. Have you seen those ones? There's these people, they're not court reporters. This makes the stenography world a little bit sassy pants. So there's some people that will go to court and they speak everything. It covers everything so no one else can hear it. And they speak what's happening in court into a thing and then transcribe it.
Really?
Now, if you talk to stenographers, that is not true court reporting. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but stenographers actually sit and type it all out as they're listening to it, right?
And they use shorthand,
so anyway,
right?
Maybe if I could have something like that where no one else could hear me, because I think that would be the part that I'd,
Can you imagine your kids walking in and your face is don't bother
Mom's writing again.
That would be funny. All right, let's see.
Could you write like that?
I can barely write on the computer. I type and then I'll write a sentence and then I'll have to see, and then I stop. And it's like my brain plays out the scene like 10 chapters from then and it goes. I'm like, will that work? And then my brain goes and I stare and I'm like, no. And I erase it and I type out a different sentence that goes a different way. And then I stop and then my brain plays out the rest of the book following that scene. And I'm like, oh, it's not going to work 5 chapters from now. Dang it. Boom. And so it's so slow. And so people are like, I write 2,000 words a day. And I'm like, I wrote 200.
But possibly the people that write, because I'm thinking I just write it, and if I don't like it or it's not going to work, I put a little asterisk next to it, but I keep going. And then I have to go back and erase a bunch later and fix it. So in my faster, really?
Yeah, I mean, in my fastest times, I do force myself to go through. I'm just like, just do it. Just write it. If it sucks, go back and fix it. When I'm kind of trying to meet a deadline, but it is very difficult for me. And that brings us actually to our next question is, while you're writing your paragraphs or your story, are you usually satisfied with what you're writing as you're writing it? Do you take the time to sort of like fix up your sentences and fancy them up and make sure that mostly spelled correctly in grammar? Or do you just let yourself go and say, nope, I'll handle it in the second edits?
Okay, so I can't stand it when my computer has those squiggle lines if a word is wrong. So it's like having notifications. I'm one of those people that never has email notifications. Like my inbox is always clean because I can't stand it. I don't like if Facebook has little notifications.
Awesome.
I hate it. So I check them just to get them erased. And sometimes I don't even look. I just click it so that the number will go away. But in full disclosure. But when I'm writing, so I'll make sure my grammar is correct. Like if it alerts me, I'll go, well, what's wrong with that? And fix that. I'll make sure it's spelled correctly. But as far as, I'm not too careful other than that. I just go, because if I stop and think too much, I stall and then I don't do it. And usually when I'm in a good groove of writing, I'm getting up at 4:30 before my family, doing my Bible and coffee, and then sitting and just writing for an hour or two. And that's the only time in the day that I'm giving myself to do it. So
what about time do you normally do it then? Like,
it would be about 5:36 until 8. I haven't written in a little while, so right now I'm well rested.
You're saying in the morning?
Yeah. I can't write at night. I've tried. I can't do it. I'm a morning person. My family is not. So I get up before everybody. And I'm up before them anyway. And if I'm really disciplined, I'm up early enough to get an hour or two of writing in before they wake up. So I don't have time to make it perfect. I just have to go.
I think about doing that, and I know that would be the best time for me to write. Like, I'd have to get disciplined. But my husband is a morning person, and he would wake up at 5 to go exercise. So if he saw me in the morning, he would be like, do you want to go for a run? Do you want to exercise? And I'd be like, no. But he really wants me to. He likes me to work out with him. And so I stay sleeping to avoid this. And so then
sounds like good marriage advice.
He knows. We refer back to my 1 year of exercise where I totally was like, we were training for a half marathon that I never accomplished. I didn't even get through a 5K. And then at 7, I have to make him breakfast to get him out the door to work. Not have to. After about 10 years of marriage, I decided I wanted to. The first 10 years was have to. So now I make him breakfast at 7, and then the kids start to wake up as soon as they hear us. So I always, but he would let me. I mean, if I woke up at 5, he'd be fine with me writing for 2 hours, but it would take a whole lot of, whoa.
It takes some discipline in the beginning, for sure. It really does. I think sometimes it takes a switch going off, but I don't ever know where the switch is. It's like someone turns it on for me. And then, so if I'm not in that place, I'm like, okay, where is that switch? Because I need, like right now, we're quarantined, right? Why do we have to get up? Who cares? No one's coming. I'm not going anywhere. So that's harder to get up early.
Yeah, it's true. So how many edits do you usually, so you'll let some things go in the first edits, but nothing that's underlined. Like obviously, like the obvious, like that was a misspelled word. That is poor grammar. You'll fix.
Right.
But do you let your plot decisions sometimes go and come back to it?
Yeah, I get really impatient with my story. And so I just want to finish it. Okay. And then I go back and fix. Sometimes I don't even go research something that needs research. I'll just put a little asterisk in parentheses and say, go find out what enterprise he would work with here or whatever, And I just put a note to myself and then continue, because I find that if I get to the end of the story, then I know the whole picture and then I can more accurately fix it. So then I go back through and rewrite it all.
And that's good advice, especially for people who are starting out who might have writer's block and they're like, I don't know what they're eating, or I don't know what street that is that they're going down. So I would definitely take note of that. Asterisk, parentheses,
give yourself a note, keep going,
find out the street, find out whatever. And you can press the review tab on your Word document and go to notes, and you can actually write yourself a little note as well.
Oh, okay.
Like when people edit your work.
Yeah, I never pay attention to making my own note.
I do. I could go up, and because then when you go through accepting changes, as you learn how to edit your own document, it will stop at all those places, whereas it would overlook your own asterisk or your own parentheses, and then you're going to make sure you catch your own, like, get back to that. That's another.
I just wrote myself a note about that. I didn't know, because I've never made my own note until someone else has made a note for me, and then I can comment on their note.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to make my own.
Just highlight and press note.
To know.
Under the review tab. Okay. How do you edit, and what do you think of the editing process? And that's even okay if you do discuss what I told you, because I edited her Even If book. So if you find a mistake in it.
Well, I did some mistakes too in my final review. I fat fingered a couple words while I was fixing words and didn't catch them. So.
Well, I guess during the editing process, the major question is, especially if you're a new author, and then say you finally got through your book and you're presenting it to somebody else to edit, what does it feel like to get it back with markings on it that somebody else made? What does that feel like? Because I know what it feels like too, so just give it to me.
It doesn't, I mean, it's a prideful feeling. It's hard to not be prideful. It's a really difficult, you know, the difficult thing about writing is you know exactly what you're trying to say. And if your editor didn't get it, and I have had that happen with all three of my editors, where they don't understand something, your first reaction is to be like, it's not my fault you didn't get that. But if they don't get it, then your reader might not get it either. So sometimes though, I will, like, if I wasn't sure I agreed with an editor, I'll send it to, you know, a couple friends, my husband, my dad, and say, what does this say? And if they all agree with me without me explaining it, then I think, okay, well, the editor just didn't catch my meaning, so I'll explain it to her. We'll move on. That's the one nice thing about self-publishing, is I get to make the final decision. So if you don't like the plot, that's all me.
Yeah.
If you don't like something that happened, it's very likely that Vanessa gave me other advice and I said, nah, I like it. I had an editor once that does not like the kind of books that I write. I love her. She's a great editor, but she doesn't like my kind of books. And so sometimes she'll comment things like, okay, this is sounding a whole lot like a women's romance book. I'm like, well, that's what it is. So she doesn't like it. It drives her crazy. So I think she wanted to kind of burn down the system starting with me. And I was like, well, then my readers won't like it if I don't do what they're reading it for. You know, They want the guy to be really kind, even if they don't think that that's what guys are really like. The thing is, all the men in my life are that way. So when I write about men, I'm not writing about them the way that I hoped that men would be. I'm writing about how the men in my life are. They're all really giving. I mean, every grandpa, my father-in-law, my father, my husband, they are all just good men. So it's just how the men in my life are. And I think people don't think that's realistic. So my editor always wants me to, you got to make him a little bit harsher. And I'm like, but it's not my reality. So anyways.
No, and that's sometimes really nice to read about, because there are a lot of books that have the man be sort of this aggressive, harsh type, because they feel like maybe that's a man's personality. And also because, and especially in a romance, the formula is kind of like two people meet, something breaks them up, something goes wrong, then they get back together for whatever reason. And even if that means getting back together with a man who is kind of mean, just you work it out. But when you do conflict, some of the nicest conflict, and I saw someone else talk about this, is not just the conflict between the people who like each other. It's conflict going on around them. And I do feel like you did that really well, because in the first couple books that weren't as much of a romance, I mean, they were the Thailand and the Cambodia one, there was conflict all around them. And it's how do these characters like pull together and get through these situations. But then even when you did move to your romance, they never hated each other. There was never so much conflict in between them in particular. There were reasons why maybe they couldn't be together, personal reasons, but it wasn't because the guy was horrible or she was horrible, or one was like overly selfish. And so you could just genuinely love the characters you had, and just realize there's all this stuff around them, which brings you to the element of Christian fiction, because how does God work out their own personal difficulties? Right. And so I like that better than I do getting with a semi-narcissistic or semi-abusive man or woman.
Right.
And making that okay.
Right. I once read a book where it was a Christian book, and the author had the female character slap the guy all the time. It was like, and it was a fictional book. I mean, sorry, a historical fiction. And so I don't know if that was like a cliche that she had seen too many Westerns or something. And I ended up reviewing that I couldn't appreciate how much this woman hit. And when she was offended at him, I just couldn't be okay with that. It was really difficult to get into a romance where they're abusive.
Now I'm going to add this. You weren't prepared for this question, but did you always intend on putting Christian themes into your book, and did you ever consider not, or just writing a clean read, or what sort of prompts you to put as much faith into your books as you do?
You know, personally, I don't think there's anything worth writing about if it's not delivering the gospel. There's no meaning to me if we're not talking about the center of all things and him who holds all things together. I've thought about, okay, if I wanted to write for a different company and couldn't write about the Lord, I don't even know that I'd have a story. Mm-hmm. Because every character, even if they're already a believer and they're not going to, no one in the book is, let's say, getting saved, or, it's still, that is the center of who I am. So I don't know how I'd write about anything else, but I also don't see a purpose unless I'm telling other people about the Lord in some way. I just feel like it's a waste of my time and theirs if I'm not doing that. And the scary thing about that is I can always misrepresent him. And I want to, sometimes I look back at my first two books and I'm not 100% sure that I was as careful as I should have been. They come off very charismatic and visions and things. And that was because I was putting them in a country that does have a lot of darkness and evil. And so it felt like a natural place to have more supernatural things happening because there's so much of a spiritual warfare going on there. But I gave some people the wrong idea about what I believe and what I think the Bible says about supernatural things. And so there are those places you have to be careful as an author because you don't want to misrepresent the Lord.
Right.
But I think I'd never stop writing about him for fear of that. I know he's a big God and he can take care of himself if I make mistakes, which I do a lot. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does. Do you have your books to hold up? I have 3 of them.
Oh, I don't have any of my books.
Okay.
I don't own a single one. Oh, look how pretty your bed is.
Ironically, I don't have the one that I edited.
Really? I thought I sent you that one.
Yeah, I want it signed.
Oh, I could have sworn I sent it to you. I'll send you one. I'll order one and send one to you.
And also because I want to reread it. I know it's on my computer, but
that is not the
same. I want to reread a good book. I'm going to reread that one.
On your computer, that's no fun.
No, not as fun. Okay, so your book 1. So the first book is...
That's my favorite cover.
Is it backwards?
No, I see it straight.
Okay. The Earth is Full. It is. It's a gorgeous cover.
And I changed my author name with those 2 books.
You did change your author name?
Like, so my first
you did.
CD Real, and then the second. They should all be linked together on Amazon. That's my second favorite cover. Those 2 are my favorite book covers.
And if you forget how to spell her name, it's I before E, just like this.
There you go.
I before E, except after Z.
I've never thought of it that way. It's really
I had to, because every time I try to type your name in, I get it wrong.
That's funny.
So I finally looked at it. I was like, figure it out.
For 14 years. What?
I just told myself, figure it out, Vanessa. Get it right. Okay, so this was the first one. The Earth is Full, and this is the second one, The Heavens Are Telling. And I do want to do another interview with you where we're actually going through some of your books, or one of your books in particular. This is trending. This is these 2 are in a series. You have not completed the series, so I don't need to point that out, but I'm just going to point that out.
That one's, we need to pray about that. Every time I try to, there is a for sure block, and it feels like the Lord has just closed that one. Like I shouldn't have said there would be a series without him.
Well, it could be that you ended it in a way where it didn't need to be completed. I might have just known that you intended to, and so in my mind it's not finished. So I haven't looked at the ending in such a long time, because if it ends there, that's totally fine. These were amazing books. I won't bug you anymore starting today.
I think I made a threat at the end of the second one. I think I did leave it a little bit hangy. It's not as much of a cliffhanger as the first one. The first one was a very deliberate cliffhanger.
Right.
The second one wasn't as deliberate. It was just
No, it wasn't. I don't remember it. I mean, there is a place you could have gone, but I don't remember it being like what's gonna happen so much that you could probably get away with it. This was a standalone, and then she has one called Even If, that is another standalone. Oh, I've got a little person at my door.
My kids are all practicing piano out there and doing school. I think my husband threatens them.
I'm gonna have to edit this part out. I'll be right back. Aloria comes running up. I stopped her last time, Mom. I promise I stopped her the last time.
Hey, we're both homeschool moms.
Yeah.
And writers. It's just how life is.
Why did you choose to self-publish?
Oh, okay. Well, so my first two books are published with a publisher that's local. And we did what is called partner publishing, where I paid for some and then they took over the rest, and then we split the split the profits.
Okay.
And they had to increase their prices and I couldn't afford them. And so I decided to try self-publishing with Trending. And I found an editor and I found a cover artist, and I just had a lot of fun with that book. And it was a release after writing about child trafficking. I needed a fun book. And then Trending actually did a lot better than I expected. So I took the profit from Trending to publish Even If. And Even If didn't do as well, and I think it's because I need a better title and a better cover. That's my opinion. And so I might republish it with a different cover and title at some time, but I don't want people to think it's a new book and feel swindled, so I'm not sure how to do that.
I think that the title Trending is pretty genius.
Thank you.
I do.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I had fun. That one was a fun book. I have a video that I made it off of a dad and daughter singing a song, and it was just a fun book for me. I just had a good time. But self-publishing I much prefer, because you get to make all the decisions, which is a little stressful because you can make the wrong one if you're being too prideful, and I've been too prideful in some areas. And obviously it costs money up front, but I have recouped my cost on both of those books at least. So I don't make a lot of money off of them. I think if I wrote more frequently, I would have better success with that. I have noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, my books are on Kindle Unlimited. I made them available there, and that's actually, I make more money from people reading them on Kindle Unlimited because you get paid per page that gets read. Right. So my husband pays attention to that. He's a numbers guy and he's always looking it up. I don't pay attention. Sometimes he'll tell me, oh, someone read 20 pages of your book today. I'm like, 20 pages? That's not very many. Don't tell me. I want to know. So
I do not. No, I don't put any. I took them off Kindle Unlimited. Personally, I did not get a lot of traffic on Kindle Unlimited. And then I wanted to put them on Draft to Digital, and you can't put them on any other platform if it's on Kindle Unlimited. And so I was thinking of doing that. So, and I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I'm just sort of dragging my feet. And so also, there's also negatives to getting off Kindle Unlimited, just like doing pricing and like putting it on 99 cents and free for a while. I don't think I have that option right now. And so I don't know. I may go back.
We'll talk later, because I found a different area to do like a 5-day special or something.
Oh, good. Yeah. So, that's one of the hard parts about being self-published, is that you do have to network with people, because you might not know how to do something and you give up and say, oh, it doesn't work. You have to go and talk to other people, because Bethany knows. I didn't know.
Doesn't know a whole lot, but yeah, that's the one thing I actually hate about being an author in general, is I just want to, whoever wants to read it, fine, but I don't like marketing. I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy it, but obviously I want to make my money back only so that I can write more, not because, I don't really expect to make much money on books. Not that I would hate it, but
have you ever seen the meme or the saying that Stephen King wrote? Now, I don't read Stephen King. I know that a lot of people watch his videos for just the art of writing itself, and I guess he has a lot of good advice, and he has books on writing. I won't read him because I don't like reading horror. Right. But he had this saying, he's like, if you wrote a book, and I wish I'd written it down, but if you wrote a book, if you had an idea and you put it on paper and you got that book published and you made a check off of that book and you paid the lighting bill with that book, you are successful.
There you go. That's awesome.
So if you bought groceries, if you paid for your books back, then you can say, I am a successful author.
Yeah, that's cool. I just like after all that work, I just want someone to read it. Yeah. So I'm even kind of satisfied when I send it to the editor, or I have beta readers that will read for me, and getting their feedback is always fun because they're probably a little bit too complimentary because they're my friends. I need beta readers that are strangers.
Explain what a beta reader is.
Just someone who will, so you get a group of people that will read your book for you and give you feedback on if it makes sense. They kind of watch for mistakes. They keep note of that. I have one beta reader that has always been really good at being a little bit more editor. She will tell me, I don't think this person makes sense right here, that kind of stuff. And I typically don't agree with her, but some of her feedback has been very, very good. So I just take all of it knowing that I get to filter it out,
Right.
But that would be, I guess, what you call a beta reader. Some bigger authors get a whole bunch of, they call them pre-readers. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to also promote the book for you when it comes out.
Right. So, and that is nice. Helpful before you give it to your final editor, to give them, as you pass it through every beta reader, you get a cleaner and cleaner copy to be able to turn it. I was going to say the way we got reconnected, because I didn't mention that, we met each other through Wes, but we got reconnected because you were only at the school a semester. And then we completely lost touch. And then I wrote my first book and stuck it on Facebook for people to know about. And our friend Sherry Duke, who I believe you're probably closer to, I knew her at school, but we weren't super close. Right. She's really sweet. She goes, hey, do you know that Bethany Reel is writing books too? And I was like, who's Bethany Reel? I know.
I was just thinking you wouldn't have known who I was.
I didn't know. I knew you, but I didn't know your last name. Now I don't remember. What was your maiden name?
Brown.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Bethany Brown. Okay, so anyway, so she got me in touch with you, and then we found out we still had all these things in common because your husband was a police officer at the time. My husband was trying to get into the police department. We went a different direction. And then we were both homeschooling our kids, and then we were both writing. So that was so much fun to find out that our lives were still...
It's so fun. And we have a lot of, even if we don't read the same books, we can have really good book conversations. I love that. It's fun to talk. I love it. I'll tell my husband, well, I'm going to talk to Vanessa for a minute. And he's like, yeah, so I'll see you in an hour at least. He knows.
Do you find that, like you said, we like talking books, and we do. Do you find that you need a writer's group of some sort, or do you have one that has helped you in your writing, or do you find that you don't really need that? Like, as a beginning writer, do you think that's necessary to find a group of other people?
I honestly think that a writing group can train you to be a good writer to your editor, because your editor is there for a purpose, whether they are with a publishing company or whether you're paying them. They make your book, and editors are super important. It's important to learn to take critique, their critique, and getting it from other authors. I've heard amazing stories from writers groups about that. I have a sweet writing group here that has invited me over and over and over again to meet with them. And it's just not my season. I mean, my husband is home now unexpectedly, and my kids are homeschooled. It's just not my season to go out and meet with other authors. But they still connect with me. They're just a really sweet group of authors around here. And they're all really successful. So I feel silly too.
To turn that down, huh?
Right. They're like in Walmart and Target and stuff, and they make money on their books. So they're just really great. So I think it would be really important to someday connect with them. I look forward to connecting with, these ladies write very different books than I do, so I might need to find different ones. I have a friend that just started writing a book, and I'm really excited because I want to pull her into some sort of writing group with me. She doesn't know that yet. And I think it'd be good to find more like-minded authors just because, but I don't know if that's necessary. But I think a writer's group is actually really beneficial if you have the time, and if you're going into it with the time to devote to them as well as take back. Like, it has to be a give and take. And that's my hang up, is I don't have time to read their stuff and get back to them. I just don't right now. So
do you feel like people, especially when you're new, that it ought to exist a certain amount, obviously I don't think it ought to exist, but that it does, a certain amount of jealousy, like, or what's that other word? Get out your thesaurus. Envy. If you see someone else who's successful, or even if you see someone else in your genre doing well, do you feel like you're like, oh, mine's better, or oh, I don't want to read that, or like, what would you counsel someone? Because I think it's difficult. It's a weird profession to go in, because on the one hand, you're really not necessarily compared to other people in a way, because people read so many books that you're a book off the shelf to them, and they're going to pull you.
Right.
It's not, you don't necessarily have to outdo somebody else.
Right.
But what advice would you give to someone who's entering into that? And because you usually feel that about most things you start, like, I've got to be better, I've got to be noticed.
Right. Or you might shy away because you're afraid you're not as good as, or
right.
I'm not, unless I'm playing games with my family, I'm not a competitive person.
Okay.
And writing is actually really good for me in that way, because like you said, you're a book off the shelf. There's no way we could keep up with our readers' demands. And so it's actually really wonderful to have writing colleagues, is that what you want to call them, or peers that you can refer your readers to, because there's always, they're not going to not buy your book because they bought someone else's book. If they want to read your book, they'll read it no matter what. And we always need, as I'm not writing, there are plenty of people out there publishing and keeping people satisfied, so it's really a place that you can encourage one another and not feel threatened. Now, that being said, I think there's always authors that you find that are successful and you're confused as to why, and so jealous. And not necessarily because you think you're better, but just because they're so bad and you don't understand why. And I'm talking big names. I'm not even talking anybody that I know down here in the trenches with me doing the small stuff. I'm talking like, I will see who's winning awards and who was up against them and I'm like, how did you pick that person on that list? Their book was horrible. And it's just, this other person's book was amazing. What are you thinking? So I think sometimes it can get there. It can feel frustrating, but I think as long as I'm personally not in it for awards, and so it's easy to let that go. But for a person who might need to be there for awards, if that's their style, they might just need to, if they're a Christian, they need to be gracious and know that the Lord is doing a work in that author's life as well as yours. And you don't get to determine, the Lord sometimes gives people great success and other people not. It doesn't mean you're doing any less of his work than the other.
True. That's
it's
true.
Just a matter of obedience.
And liking a book or not is very, very subjective, because you could have a very good fantasy writer, but if you don't like to read fantasy, it doesn't matter. And if you don't, and your one editor didn't like to read romance, so it's hard sometimes to recognize the good in another book if you just simply don't like the style. Like, I don't like a lot of narrative. I like a lot of dialogue. So if the book has a lot of narrative, no matter how good it is, I'll probably skim over most of it.
Right, because
but I can still admit, well, it's a good book, not my cup of tea.
Right. I think there's also, my husband's always saying there's a book for everybody, because everybody is so different. Some people, just their voice in general, because everyone has their own voice. Their own voice can be fantastic while the book is awful, or it could be a horrible voice, but you like the story. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. You can't overthink it. You just need to know there's probably going to be at least one person who loves your book, and that's what matters. It just feels good when someone reads it and loves it.
And what you mean by your own voice, I don't know if I could describe that adequately, and so jump in, but to someone who might not know what that means, it's the way It's the way you write your characters. It may not be necessarily, we're not talking like accent.
Yeah.
It's just your style of writing. Like
Right.
you could pick up someone's book and be like, oh my gosh, this seems so much like Francine Rivers, or oh, this seems so much like this thing. And you should not copy somebody else's voice. In fact, when I write, and I don't know if I should ask you a question. One of the reasons I'm having such a hard time finishing my 4th book right now too is because I am reading other books. And I don't like reading other books while I'm writing. I usually have to go on a fast because I find myself loving the way she writes or he writes. And then I want to like insert it in my mind. I'm like, no, I need to write the way I write.
Right.
And it can be very distracting and difficult, especially if you really enjoy somebody else's voice better than your own. Can you read other books while you're writing your own?
I can't, and it's not so much for that reason, although I think everyone struggles with that. Every author struggles with that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I once heard an author say, I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure so many have said it that it's actually cliche advice, but it's, if you want to be a good author, then you need to be an avid reader, because it is important to hear how other people see how other people put a story together, to understand how a story should be put together in a way that's interesting, right? Not to steal their voice, but it kind of does something in your brain to see, oh, someone completely took that definition and made it here, and but I can't, because I'm so focused. Like, I don't sleep well when I'm writing a book. It's just my brain is always firing, and so I can't concentrate on movies or TV very well. I'm very distracted when I'm writing, and it's frustrating. I think that's why I hurry to get through, because I'm not distracted when I'm editing. I'm only distracted when I'm writing my first draft. And so I try to rush to get through that process for my family's sake and my own sanity. And I can't read during that because I just can't concentrate.
If you want to be a new writer, or if you are one, it is incredibly important to read, and read within the genre you want to write. Readers who are very loyal to their genre.
Right.
And so it's actually very helpful to read within your genre, to know what writers are writing, because it's the spot they park at, and that's where they want to be.
Yeah, right. That's good advice. That's really good advice. I am excited to do these more. I think this will be fun. I need to come back to you and interview you.
Yes. Okay, so that'll be our next one. Bethany we're going to reverse, flip the tables. She's going to ask me questions. And although I've commented some on the things she said, I think we do have differences in the way we approach things. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And then after that, we hope to flip-flop on several specific books with each other. And then maybe just add in whatever books we're reading and talk about that in the future. So
let's do it.
All right, I'm excited. So people can find you online under either, or Bethany Real?
I'm trying to remember it's like I never update my website. I think it's BD Real Author. So I'm Bethany Real Author at Instagram is my most frequent social media place.
Oh, Instagram?
And Bethany Real Author on Facebook. And I think from there you can find my website. And my books are on Amazon.
Okay. At WordPress, you're BD Real.
There you go. Yep. Okay.
.wordpress.com. On Amazon, it looks like you're Bethany Real. So I just typed in Bethany Real in the search engine, and a bunch of stuff popped up, even Pinterest and Goodreads. Oh, goodness.
And I write for a local magazine, so that'll probably pop up too. But
it popped up your images.
Oh, there you go.
Picture and books and
such old skinny pictures.
Oh yeah, what magazine do you write for?
It's called Christian Living Magazine, here local. So it's not the big Christian Living. It's just
small town Christian Living.
Right. Yeah.
No, I enjoy your articles, because you said you like to write essays and stuff, and actually I think you do an amazing job at it, and I don't like that. I don't think I'm very good at it. I struggle with those kind of things, but I do very much enjoy writing your articles and reading your art. Right, I enjoy writing your articles.
Do it. Put it in your own hometown magazine.
Reading them, and also your blogs. So are your blogs on your website or on Facebook? They
would be on the WordPress. I haven't blogged a lot, but I intend to start again. I kind of veered off We were looking into me having a career for a little while, and I was training for that. And then my family decided they prefer me home. And so now my attention is going back to writing more specifically. And I usually post my articles on my blog because they're really just blogs that get put in a magazine. So I don't know how to write articles. I write blogs. But I will be updating there more. It's more personal family stuff than writing stuff, but that's what the Lord's teaching me. But it usually makes it into a book. So just whatever he's teaching me during that season is what the book theme will be about.
And you mentioned that you really are happy that you're back at home and not going into this career.
Very happy, yeah.
Because it affected how you felt about writing, right?
Because what?
It affected how you felt about writing, or you said it made you feel. I would
get to write.
Yeah.
Career. I kept hoping it would give me time, but it didn't give me time. And I see now it's what the Lord has for me more than bringing in the bacon, you know. So,
and when you have a story inside you and you don't get to write it, how did that make you feel? You told me.
Oh, it's awful. It's so awful. I haven't been able to write my book. I've been working on a book for a year, but I haven't been able to write it in a year. I wrote it 3 times last year, and then my husband got diagnosed with MS, and then it's just all writing stopped for a while.
Yeah.
So now we've done as much research as my head can possibly manage on the subject, and we have adjusted to our life, and now I'm back to normal. Let's go write these stories. And so I'm excited to get back to it.
I know, and I've bugged you too, and you've been patient with me. I'm like, next. You're my only contemporary writer I can count on.
Sorry. See, this is why you like other authors, because then you don't have the pressure of your reader.
That's true. I do. I did like Robin Lee Hatcher's. She had a contemporary. I actually liked it more than her historical. I read 2 of them. What
did you read of her? She has a lot of contemporary.
I read Firstborn, and it just, oh gosh, I cried so much through that book.
I think you might like The Forgiving Hour of hers.
Forgiving Hour? Okay.
Mm-hmm. She has like 40-something books. So she whips them out, like 1 or 2 a year. She's fast. She's really good friends with Francine Rivers too.
Yeah, Francine Rivers has like a writers group I heard about that she gets all her friends together and they meet somewhere.
In a cabin in North Idaho. This is what we need to do, Vanessa. This is the writing group I want. Let's go to a cabin once a year and write and have fun and eat. And
you get like-minded writers. You go in and you hash out your plots and you go over each other's mistakes, and you just stare at each other over your computers and
it sounds so fun.
I've been wanting to come so long, like to visit you in Boise. I have.
That'd be so fun.
Do you have any writers conferences in Boise?
We did a while ago. That's where I met my publisher, but I'm no longer, I don't get writing updates or anything in Idaho. I have no idea. You'll have to ask Peter. Peter would know.
Peter Lavelle?
Yeah. You have to ask him.
Did you find writers conferences to be helpful? Because it's kind of like my life, like my ambition to get to a writers conference.
Right. I would love to go to a big one. The one here was just a 1-day one, and it was really helpful. I learned a lot, and also I met my publisher there. So that actually got the whole ball rolling.
Oh,
and the funny thing is my publisher was my husband's coworker, and I had no idea he was a writer and publisher, and I'm looking at my husband like, what did you tell me? And now we're great friends. And so Ray Ellis, he writes fun books too. He writes contemporary, like cop crime kind of books. And so and then he has a few fantasy books. So anyways, but for that purpose, it was really helpful. In fact, it was interesting. It was the first time I sat with other authors and heard them talk and heard how they do things. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of a word count. You know, someone said, you know, how much of your book have you got written? I'm like, I don't know, like 100 pages. And they all stared at me like I was crazy. And then I listened to the rest of them. They're like, I have 30,000 words. Oh, words. Okay. You have to say words. So even if, I know you haven't seen it yet, but even if it's like thick, it's really, really thick. I was embarrassed when it came to my house because it was so big.
Okay, don't be, because when I first started out, I was embarrassed that mine was so small. But my publisher said, no, you need to keep them small. $9.99 is a good price for a book. Right. You don't want to get these big old fat books that cost so much. And
Right.
so she had me split up my first book, which would have been the combo of it happened to me twice. My first 2 books were one book. And she
Okay.
said split them in half, so I did. But all the books that I love to read were huge, or fairly big. So I was like, but it's so tiny.
That's really funny.
Yours did not turn me off at all that it was
Okay. Because it's like
bigger.
90,000 words. It's a lot. It's a big book.
That's great. Obviously we can't end this video, so I'm just
Have to
so
though.
anyway, we'll pick it up hopefully next week, or as soon as we can get together. So thank you, Bethany, so much. I love you.
I love you too. It's so fun. I'm so glad we dated the same guy.
Me too. We thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Wes. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.